Welcome to Trial Site News podcast series. Today we are pleased to have with us two healthcare leaders from Hoag Hospital, which is based in Newport Beach, California, and has been consistently been named the highest ranked hospital in Orange County by U.S. News and World Report's Best Hospitals survey. So first we have Dr. Michael Brant-Zawadzki. He's the senior physician executive at Hoag, facilitating business and strategic relationships with specialist clinicians, overseeing a platform for programmatic care that integrates specialized services with population health. He helps Hoag transform healthcare strategy by focusing on specific health conditions using a program-driven, physician-led, multidisciplinary team approach measured by patient-focused outcomes. And then we have Dr. Burton Eisenberg, Executive Medical Director, Endowed Chair, Hoag Family Cancer Institute. Dr. Eisenberg was co-recruited by Hoag and USC Keck School of Medicine in 2013 as the Executive Medical Director over Hoag Family Cancer Institute. He is a full faculty member in the Department of Surgery at Keck and spends his time at Hoag Family Cancer Institute with his main office located at the Newport Beach campus. So Dr. Brant-Zawadzki and Dr. Eisenberg, welcome.
Okay, thank you.
So, privilege to be with you today.
Pleasure is ours. So, Dr. Eisenberg, let's start with you. I want to jump right into this. The Hoag Center for Research and Education's vision is to be nationally recognized as a center of excellence in clinical research by providing access to cutting-edge therapies and innovative technologies. I can tell you that Trial Site News not only has a large national but also international audience, and we certainly recognize Hoag's contribution to research. Can you shine some light on this mission? Where are you today, and where do you want to be next year, 3 years from now, and 5 years out?
Good. Thank you for the opportunity. So we place a fairly significant investment, if you will, on patient-driven clinical research at Hoag. And the combined efforts now have sort of coalesced over the last couple of years as a singular entity to support the clinical research operations at Hoag. If we're going to succeed, particularly on the cancer side, as a significant player in terms of patient care in new cancer therapies, we have to have a substantial investment and program in clinical research. One of the things that has happened over the last several years is that we've more centralized that clinical research operation. So we have a more of a singular entity now that's supported by the hospital and heavily supported through philanthropy. And that has allowed us then to have a number of very seasoned clinical research coordinators, as well as leadership on the administrative end, other factors such as contracts and support staff. So, and going forward, that's going to be increasingly important, certainly on the cancer side, to get new therapies quickly to our cancer patients.
So about how many clinical trials then does Hoag conduct per year, and what is your capacity for growth?
Our current trial load is approximately 165. That includes new trials enrolling patients as well as ongoing follow-up trials, meaning trials that are no longer enrolling patients, but we still need to accrue data. We are rapidly expanding our infrastructure, particularly with COVID. We were fortunate enough to be chosen for the first Gilead remdesivir trial, and we're one of the highest enrolling sites. We have 12 trials purely dedicated to COVID, including antivirals, we're part of the National Convalescent Plasma Registry with Mayo Clinic, and we're about to start 2 vaccine trials, in fact, next week. So across the spectrum of the type of COVID trials out there, that requires a dramatic acceleration, if you will, of our infrastructure, operational and a financial standpoint. One of the benefits to trials at an institution like Hoag, without a university bureaucracy, is that we can be much more nimble. We can enroll patients more readily because our regulatory climate is lesser than it is at many major academic institutions. Despite that, we are able to offer the same infrastructure, and we can do it more cheaply because we have lower overhead.
So what then is the breakdown of therapeutic areas? Now, we here at Trial Site News, we have many industry sponsors that come in and check us out constantly. And I'm sure they would love to know. So what are research growth areas for Hoag?
So I think we have some opportunities, and as the research infrastructure can support, we brought in a lot of new sponsors, and with that opportunity for new therapeutics, we continue to add to that staff. We're going to very shortly expand into the Hoag facility in Irvine. So we'll have two separate sites, both in Newport Beach and Irvine. I think the growth has been absolutely phenomenal over the past, well, since I've been here, over the past 5 years or so. In cancer, we went from just a handful of trials to now about 60 trials, particularly interested in those that bring new drugs, what we call phase 1 drugs. That is drugs that are just out of preclinical testing. And we have a couple of trials, particularly in the cancer area for first in man. So we're actually doing trials now that require a great deal of oversight and a significant investment. I think the growth potential right now is significant and on both campuses. And hopefully we're about to launch a new initiative in immuno-oncology that will, I think, provide another set of very innovative trials particularly for patients with advanced cancers.
Let me be a little bit more specific and maybe concise in terms of the areas for growth. So we look at it as a combination of device, pharma, and let's call it artificial intelligence, and or let's call it software. So we have trial relationships around all of those. In the device category, whether it's cardiac or neurointerventional or robotics, you name it, we have significant research efforts across the spectrum of device trials. Next, Bert already mentioned the pharma trials, not just in cancer, but also in the neurosciences and cardiac sciences. We were the first in the world to do a trial on tau, tagging pharmaceuticals for PET scanning tau deposits in the brain. And our neurosciences pharma trials are very robust. And finally, the newest development is virtual reality applications in health, as well as artificial intelligence applications in machine learning in a variety of areas, including imaging, including biotherapeutics. So we have a robust spectrum of trials across those three major areas, that being device, pharma, and let's call it software, artificial intelligence.
So let's shift gears here a little bit. I'm going to talk to you guys about Protubumab. Now, Trial Site covered the collaboration of Hoag's Family Cancer Institute and Pickup Family Neurosciences Institute, which had the Nascent Biotech, a clinical trial involving a novel immunotherapy treatment with considerable promise to address glioblastoma. Can you share any updates with this important effort?
Well, the platform that Bert and his team have built on a variety of cancer vaccine trials is now being leveraged to target the deadliest brain tumor there is, which is glioblastoma. I think your audience is well aware that many prominent figures have been stricken and have succumbed to glioblastoma. People like John McCain, people like Ted Kennedy, who notably went to Duke, which I might add is a little behind Hoag on the U.S. News and World rankings for neurosciences. We're proud to be in the top 1% of that. So we have a robust tumor program, and we've had a number of trials in the area of brain tumors and glioblastoma specifically. This particular trial leverages the platform I referred to of a vaccine dedicated against tumors that start in the epithelial cell category. And I'll let Bert add on to that because he's more seasoned in this particular area of tumor vaccine development.
So this trial really is a novel use of an antibody, which is a protein that recognizes certain abnormalities on cell surfaces and initiates an immune response. But this particular antibody recognizes a protein that is located on the cell surface of many different types of cancers. This protein is called vimentin, and it is highly expressed on brain tumors. So the action here is to get essentially a drug and initiate an immune response against cancer cells because they exclusively express this protein and normal cells do not. It's the same sort of targeted approach that we've used in a number of different clinical trials and new drugs. This idea of targeted therapy has been around for about 20 years, but it's really beginning now to come to a significant clinical application. And this is just another example of the type of antibody that can be developed specifically to target a cancer-associated protein.
Now, Dr. Eisenberg, we covered that Hoag was exclusively selected as the only hospital in Orange County and the only non-academic institution to offer a very promising phase 2 immunotherapy trial for solid tumors. Investigators hope to demonstrate efficacy on pancreatic cancer, one of the most dangerous forms of cancer, as it is an immunotherapy-based investigational product. Now, we know that it uses the body's own immune system to fight off deadly cancers. Can you share more about this important trial?
Yeah, so this is an interesting trial because, I look at it as a progression of understanding of cancer biology, and particularly now in the last decade, the immune modulation has become a critical factor in treating cancer. Cancer science now has come into the clinic in a way that we haven't seen it before, and particularly now relating to the immune response to various types of cancers. So what this trial really is taking an immune cell. In this case, it doesn't come from the patient directly. It's an off-the-shelf product. But this cell is called a natural killer cell. It's present in everybody. We have it circulating all over our body. This particular cell line is developed in the laboratory, and then it's genetically modified. It's altered to recognize a specific type of target on a cancer cell. So these cells then are given, millions of them, given intravenously to patients with advanced cancers, in combination with some types of chemotherapy and another agent that boosts the immune response overall. And the purpose here is to develop a treatment for pancreatic cancer. The initial results of this trial in the early phase have been very promising. There's been some patients with advanced pancreatic cancer who are heavily pretreated with standard therapy drugs that have responded very favorably to this sort of immune stimulation and activation of both sides of the immune response, the innate and the adaptive immune response. And we're starting this trial. I believe the first patient will be treated at Hoag with this type of cell therapy in the next 2 weeks. A lot of people have heard about cell therapy in relation to what's called CAR T therapy, which has been successfully used and approved by the FDA for certain types of heme malignancies, leukemias and lymphomas, certain phenotypes, but this is for a solid tumor. So this is different in terms of the overall effect and the target, and we hope that will expand this trial into treating other types of solid tumors like head and neck cancer, lung cancer, and so forth. It is our next foray, if you will, into new therapies for cancer.
Now, we've covered your initial interest in medicine and your personal drivers to Hoag and its growing prominence in healthcare, to specific studies and research breakthroughs with potential to save lives. This is what it's all about. Now, there is an incredible chasm, as mentioned, between the research and the clinic, which Trial Site News is committed to help bring together or close the gap. Now, today, there's about 3% of doctors only in the United States that actually participate in research on a regular or even somewhat regular basis, and it's been this way for a long time. Most doctors try to become an investigator once and never do so again. In the industry, it's called a one and done. Could you share with Trial Site why you think this is the case?
Well, let me take a first stab at that. Having come from a formal academic research background, Stanford and University of California, San Francisco, where I conducted, where I first learned how to conduct research and got interested in research, conducted one of the first animal research laboratories for magnetic resonance imaging. NIH grants that whole spectrum of academic research. I think that 3% number is a little bit misleading because it reflects the ratio of academic institution and researcher volume to the much larger proportion of community medical practice. In the community, most physicians are swamped with clinical work, which is demanding and time consuming. So in the community, it's much harder to conduct research for physicians by physicians, and only those institutions which help foster the hidden, if you will, passion of all physicians for research. We were a science-based, knowledge-based profession after all. And so that gets blunted if you go out into a community and practice and have the burdens of practice, which many academic physicians are partly relieved from by stipends from the university for teaching and research. In the community, that does not exist. Physicians have to create their economic climate based on clinical practice. And research intrudes into that ability to sustain oneself economically. Thus, only a small percentage of community-based institutions without a university in front of them can create a platform that sustains the passion of most physicians for research, but also provides them the economic ability to conduct research through the administrative capabilities of a research infrastructure and through philanthropy. So the one and done syndrome relates to the fact that some community physicians may get lulled into a research trial by a pharmaceutical or a device company and realize the burden it actually places on them and detracts from their sustainability economically, and they're done. Whereas with a sustainability platform like Hoag and some other non-university institutions have developed, we can foster that. And like I said earlier, we can conduct research for the sponsors in a much more efficient and lower cost manner with greater patient enrollment.
And I think I agree with everything that was said. I do think it's difficult for the average physician to conduct credible research. The regulatory issues, the contract issues, the the demands on time and effort are significant, and unless there is some system that allows that physician the time and the ability to conduct research trials, it becomes very difficult, particularly in a community setting. So it's laudable that Hoag has been able to move this needle along in a fairly short period of time to develop a number of these trials in cancer and neuroscience and cardiology, as was said, to really benefit the community. You know, most patients get care close to home. They don't want to travel for hours, particularly in the way that Southern California deals with traffic. And your family's close to you, particularly now in the issues that we're having today. Your family's close to you. You go to your facility that's close to your home. You get world-class opportunity to participate in a research project and benefit from that is particularly important. In most university settings and most comprehensive cancer centers, having 10 to 12 to 15% of patients on clinical research trials is almost unheard of. Anything over 20% is amazing. And so I think the average patient needs to realize that all treatments that we have today are usually the result of some prior research project that was done to establish that treatment as standard of care. And many of the new treatments that are coming out in the future will be very dependent on the ability to conduct research trials today. These are safe. They're very highly regulated. As a matter of fact, most clinical research patients are in a system where the care is actually better than the standard care they might get outside of a research trial. So it is very important for us to emphasize, particularly because this is trial site news, but it's very important for us to emphasize the critical need for these research trials to continue, even in the face of COVID-19. The trials that are ongoing concerning the viral epidemic that we're having right now, many of the drugs that will come out of this trial will be very useful, not only in repurposing for other types of diseases, but maybe for the next epidemic that we have. So I'd like to just emphasize the importance then of having participation, if it's wise and eligible for a patient to do so. No patient in a research trial will be given a treatment that we believe is inferior, in a sense, to a standard therapy. And many patients in these research trials, particularly those that are getting new drugs, have already had standard therapies and they're not working. So this is an opportunity for them to, particularly to come to Hoag and to allow that evaluation to take place.
I think one of the differentiators of Hoag is that we focus on compassionate care first. So our motto is in the Neuro Institute is compassionate care, clinical excellence, and creative intelligence, as opposed to perhaps turning that around, where the currency of major research institutions, academic institutions, is research and teaching and clinical care. We start with the clinical care piece, and as Bert will tell you, one cannot do excellent clinical care today without excellent cancer trials in the cancer arena.
So let's expand on this a little bit. What ideas do you gentlemen have about innovative and practical ways to support doctors in research?
Well, actually, what we're doing at Hoag in terms of evolution of our Center for Research and Education is we're in the early stages of creating what we call a Center for Advanced Technology. Think of it as an incubator or accelerator, but on a different vision, where we bring together both mature and startup companies with Hoag's translational platform, and that allows those companies to conduct more nimble research and development on their products, whether it's devices, technology, or software, as I mentioned, and leverages Hoag's increasingly talented pool of physicians and provides those physicians with sustainability from an economic and a self-fulfillment perspective to conduct research. That Center for Advanced Technology may have joint venture components to it that enable financial incentive alignment between industry, the institution, and the physicians. Hoag does not employ its own physicians, unlike academic centers, which have faculty practices that do. So we have to leverage the entrepreneurial side of our physicians and marry that and channel that entrepreneurial side into research collaborations. And as I said, all of them have at least latent research interests. And when provided with the right milieu of conducting research without the fulfilling their passions, without the burden on the economic side, and perhaps even enhancing the economic side, that creates a context for a triple win, quadruple win. The patient, number one, has access to the latest technologies, devices, pharma, and software. The companies have a sandbox in which they can play together if they want, separately if they want. We have several collaborations between a couple of three companies in the same project that enables faster and co-opetition, if you will, development of their particular interests. And we have the hospital's interests in providing to the community the latest advances, as well as a financial platform for sustaining all of it.
Now, one final question for you guys. There's on top of all of this, there is another big challenge, and that is the lack of diversity in clinical trials. Now, even with COVID-19, there's this challenge still exists. Even when there's billions of dollars going into research, there are trust issues and a general fear of the unknown. Could you share perhaps for some of your peers on a high level best practices to get patients engaged and learning about clinical trials? Could you expand on that?
Well, we have a robust communications team that promotes our trials widely to the community. Obviously, to some degree, the issue of diversity is hamstrung, if you will, by the local community and the diversity of the local community. We have a fairly diverse local community. Our Hispanic population is, and our Asian population is, and our Middle Eastern population, all of them are fairly robust in Orange County. So the African American community is perhaps somewhat underrepresented in Orange County compared to other major metropolitan centers, but we still have that community. And so all of them are able to access our trials. We also have a platform for outreach to the underserved. We have a federally supported clinic that reaches out to those that are in either the lower economic echelons of our society or have no ability to support themselves. So we strive to provide the best possible access for our very diverse community that we can, both from an ethnic and a socioeconomic perspective.
I think the other thing is education, patient education, particularly related to what potentially is available in terms of therapies, new treatments, and so forth. And Hoag does a pretty good job, as BZ alluded to, in terms of communication. We have newsletters, website. If you go to the nci.gov, a listing of clinical trials, you'll find trials that are within the Hoag sphere as well. We put on educational seminars, both for physicians and for the lay public. There are a number of trials related to cancer early detection and prevention. Certain ethnic groups are more susceptible to particular types of cancers that we try to emphasize in terms of getting patients screened, and particularly those patients at higher risk. So there's a lot going on in all aspects of medicine here that relate to a more diverse population of patients that we serve in our community and even outside our community.
Thank you guys again for joining us. We're honored to have you here. We here at Trial Site News have a personal connection to Hoag from one of our founders, and we certainly will be following the research there.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Exactly.
Thank you.